Hey, what's up, everybody? Infusion's Cap here. I got Raven's Anger with me, and we got some pretty exciting news today. The new modified list was just announced, so we're going to kind of go over it here, talk about some of the changes, and mention some of the decks that we think are going to go up or down in stocks. Pretty exciting stuff. What do you think, Raven's Anger?
Yeah, it looks pretty good. Definitely excited to try some stuff out. Hopefully, it's not. Hopefully, ends up being better than I think it'll be.
All right.
Always glad to see Cyberstein go down in the list.
Yep, so let's get right into it here. Forbidden section, nothing new being added compared to the previous iteration of the list. There are a few things coming off. We'll get into that here in a second. So, in the limited section, like you said a second ago, Cyberstein to 1. That's pretty cool. I think a lot of people would say that doesn't, have a huge impact on anything. I think the biggest deal with that is if you're playing a deck that's trying to get it out off of Last Will and you draw your only copy, then you're forced into normal summoning it. Any other thoughts on Cyberstein?
Yeah, I mean Cyberstein going to one, like you said, not that big a deal. But if you get rid of the one, then you don't have to worry about it usually. And then we might have to see Last Will come down in the list later on, but we'll have to see.
Yeah, I definitely think that's something that we're going to need to keep an eye on. Machiora staying in the format. There's really only one infinite with it. There is another change that we're going to get to later in the list that is maybe going to give that a little bit of a push. Couple of interesting things. Going to 1, we have Mirage of Nightmare and Emergency Provisions. That's an old school combo from pre-GOAT. It's going to be interesting to see what kind of gets put together with that. What do you think about Mirage?
Yeah, it's a card I've only played with a couple times, and it does draw a lot of cards, but you do have to discard if you don't get the combo. If you don't get, you can use your MST or your emergency provisions, or we're trying to use, Brigeki Break also to destroy it before you have to discard.
Right. Yeah, I mean there's a few ways to kind of guarantee that payoff, so it'll be interesting to see what people put together with that. Speaking of other banned cards that are now limited to 1, we've got Butterfly Dagger Elma. So I'm sure a lot of people are already thinking about the combo with Gearfried and Royal Magical Library and draw your deck and find Exodia. It'll be kind of interesting to see if anybody puts anything else together with that. What do you think about the dagger? Is that too much?
Yeah, it's not a huge problem because it requires two normal summon creatures, right? And then, if you have Exodia in your deck, you have five dead cards essentially. So
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think Exodia is one of those decks that, could use a little bit of a push like that. So if it even ends up being a big deal, I think if there's a combo deck that everybody can get behind, it's Exodia. All right, let's talk about Upstart Goblin. Upstart Goblin is at 2 in normal goats. It was at 3 in the previous version of the mod list, and now it's going all the way down to 1. So what do you think about that?
yeah, Upstart Goblin is just a free card essentially in a lot of decks. It does make Magician of Faith better because it gives you, sometimes you'll draw a hand, you have no spells, and the Magician of Faith, it's useless, right? And it
Right.
might be your only monster too. So it did make that better, but Magician of Faith doesn't really need to be better. So I'm happy to see Upstart go to one and maybe even zero later. So I'm good with that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I know that one change that was kind of debated and sort of angled for by a portion of the mod community was some sort of limitation to Magician of Faith. And I think Upstart to 1 might be a way to, kind of soften her up a little bit without having to actually touch her. So it's kind of an interesting approach. Another thing that is swapping from the previous list is level limit area B coming back to 1. So this is kind of getting us almost back to parity with normal goats. So normal goats, it's 2 level limit, 2 bind. In this previous version of mod, it was 3 bind with no level limits, and now we're at 3 bind with 1 limit. So we still have that 4 count, but bind is obviously a more fair card than level limit. So what do you think? Do you think that extra floodgate card in the level limit kind of pushes burn where it needed to be to really have a good showing, or?
Yeah, I think this is just due to another card going to two that we'll see later on. I think it's fine to have one. I think it would be fine to have, to go back to two and two. I kind of like the two and two approach in regular goats, but overall, I think this is fine.
Yeah, yeah, I'm right there with you. All right, so no other changes to the limited. Let's get into that other card that you were talking about. So Breaker the Magical Warrior going to 2, one of the premier normal summons of the format, and it's going up to 2. Is it going to be too much? Is it going to fall in line with these other changes that we're seeing? Time will tell. What do you think? What's your gut feeling on this?
Yeah, I think Breaker is really good, especially in this format. Everyone plays Mirror Force, so you're always going to have something to hit with it. And it's just a free spell and trap removal card, and you get two of them now, and it's got 1600 attack even if after using the counter. So it's a very powerful card, very scary. Pushes you to play non-Sakuretsu armor traps, more Book of Moons, and maybe even bottomless trap hole. So we'll have to see how it plays out.
Yeah, I think out of all of these changes, the breaker to two has the biggest ripple effect throughout the the overall meta and the way people are going to need to build. It's also this really interesting mind game where a lot of the time when you're playing these goat games, you're counting, okay, is heavy gone, is MST gone, is breaker gone, and now you have to worry about two breakers. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see what kind of overall impact that has. Another really good monster that's going to two is Exiled Force. Not as powerful as Breaker, obviously, but definitely an interesting choice. It is the premier Last Will activator. So this is kind of a boost to the warrior deck. It's going to be a boost to control strategies. It's going to be a boost to combo strategies. So I think that's a pretty exciting change too. What do you think?
Yeah, this makes Last Will even better than it already was, which does kind of compensate for the Cyberstein going to one. But overall, I think most decks aren't going to want to play two Exiled's main. You still have cards like Nobleman across out and Smashing Ground that don't use your summon to kill a monster to consider.
Right.
And you don't really need more than one because you have Reinforcement of the Army, which acts as your second and third Exiled already. So I
Yeah,
think most
that's
decks will
true.
play one, maybe side deck one, and
Yeah,
it'll be fun.
I think that will be kind of the common pattern that we see with it. Still really interesting stuff nonetheless. Okay, so another change that is a little more on the wild side, Mage Power and United We Stand go into two. This is obviously a big boost to things like the Benkai Mataza strategy. Lots of power in those cards. United especially can be flexed into other decks and comboed with Scapegoat. So I do think that's going to be something we want to keep an eye on. What do you think about that?
Yeah, you can do a lot of damage with these cards, and they're pretty flexible in what they do. You can combo Scapegoat and United We Stand for just a free 3200 monster. Mage Power, a little less powerful than United, but I think overall, Benkai definitely got a boost, and you're going to be wanting to draw your one True Nade or your one Heavy Storm, and then pretty much win the game. We'll have to see how many Karibos and Threatening Wars are put into side decks from now on.
Yeah, I do think that's going to have a bit of an impact on the way side decks are formed in this format. You know, with Trunade being at one, it's sort of a check to the power level of that strategy. You do still have Decree, but we also have Breaker to two now, so there's definitely counterplay to Decree where there is not counterplay to Giant Trunade. So it's going to be really interesting to see how all that shakes out. Circling back to the upstart to one, we're also getting another change with the draw power, Jar of Greed going to two. I think the thought behind these changes were try to limit the amount of cards in decks that aren't real cards that are just there to thin to other things. Jar is kind of more interesting than Upstart in that you can bluff and bait with it. I kind of wish it had stayed at three with Breaker going to two, just for that reason, because it kind of forces the Breakers to fish a little bit more and instead of being more targeted. But maybe it's not a huge change. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think two is fine. Most decks didn't want to play three anyways, and with Makiora, having it down to two is a safer option for sure.
Yeah, I'm glad you bring that up. You know, circling back to Makiora, let's go ahead and talk about the other card that combos with Makiora and with the emergency provisions, and that is Good Goblin Housekeeping. That's limited to two in normal goats, and it's going to three on this list. It's kind of interesting because the first one is just worse than Jar of Greed, the second one is equivalent to Jar of Greed, and the third one is Pot of Greed. But if you manage to get two with emergency provisions, it's a totally different story. You're generating a ton of advantage there. So, and then you have the Makiora to consider to be able to play them straight from your hand on your turn. So, what do you think about Good Goblin? Is it still just too slow, or is three where it has to be to actually have a shot?
Yeah, you need three to even have a chance to making it playable. So I still don't know if it's good or not, but this is definitely how you find out, right? So let's see what happens.
Yeah, I think that's going to be one of the more interesting cards to keep an eye on and see if it really does start having an impact. A couple more changes to the list that kind of push burn strategies, but not in the typical way of, your Stolly burn type deck. We're getting Reflect Bounder to three and Magic Cylinder to three. That would be pretty crazy if Breaker wasn't going to 2. So maybe, that's sort of a check on that. But that's definitely an interesting thing. You got to be really careful about attacking these days. So how do you feel about these changes?
Yeah, it's interesting. Reflect Bounder was at 2 in the last list, 1 in regular goats. Didn't see a whole lot of play in regular goats, but that's because, BLS and Chaos Sorcerer can just remove it. In this format, you do have 2 exiled now, but then that takes up your normal summon, so then they can just play another monster and hit you. We'll have to see. I think Reflect Bounder might be better than people give it credit for. Magic Cylinder, on the other hand, definitely very strong, especially against the right decks. Does lose out to Breaker, but if you're playing a burn type strategy, Breaker has to worry about more than just Magic Cylinder. So it
Right.
isn't exactly a quick and clean answer all the time.
Yeah, exactly. It almost overtaxes the breaker, right? Like a lot of times your breakers end up having to deal with, the level limit or the gravity bind, and you can't
Right.
really just be aiming at random face downs that could just as easily be something like Secret Barrel, and then you've just wasted, premium removal on a chainable card. So, for that reason, it may end up having a really big impact. We'll see how it goes. Yeah, so I mean that's pretty much the whole list. Based on these changes, who do you think are the big winners and losers in terms of the different archetypes? I mean, obviously, Benkai is getting some extra support here. Are there any other strategies you're really keeping an eye on?
Yeah, Benkai is definitely up there. I do want to try to build a deck with Mirage and Nightmare, and definitely looking at Reflect Bounder and Magic Cylinder decks too. The burn decks definitely have a new way to play.
Yeah, something that isn't, just this really hyper durdle strategy. They can be a little more proactive, and it's kind of a scary thing too, for like the burn beatdown hybrid to get that kind of support, because it puts you in a position where you have to push back, and then you could just be pushing back into a wall of magic cylinders. So yeah, I mean
Exactly.
it's gonna be crazy for sure. We're definitely going to have to build something with the dagger, some kind of Exodia variant with the dagger as well. See if we can pull it off.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see.
That's the list. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to comment and tell us what you're excited to see in this third iteration of the modified format. Definitely make sure you're getting involved in the modified monthly tournaments on the Goat Format Discord. We'll have a link for that in the description. There's a big tournament coming up, I believe, towards the end of this month. Definitely going to want to come play that if you're a fan of modified and you're inspired by some of these changes and want to see what you can put together. Definitely come out and be a part of that. Until next time, thanks for watching.